Hello, everyone, and welcome to the live stream. I'm John Lorenzini, aka JLo, VP of Marketing Science here at LiftLab. Before we get started, I'd like to plug the series Curve Your Enthusiasm. Curve Your Enthusiasm is conversations with experts from the front lines of growth marketing, analytics, and measurement. From boardrooms to classrooms, we have a great blend of academics, practitioners, and strategists, all nerding it out while trying to keep it as jargon-free as possible. Today's episode is From Startup to Scale, Why Different Growth Stages Need Different Metrics with Adam Lovallo. This episode is broken up into three major topics: growth of measurement as the marketing execution landscape changes, channel mix changes in the industry, and mobile gaming as marketers. And now let's meet our speakers. First up is co-founder and CEO of LiftLab, previous founder of DataSong, which he successfully exited to market share, John Wallace. John Wallace, welcome to the show. Next up, we have special guest Adam Lovallo. He co-founded MAUvegas.com, North America's largest mobile app growth conference, which he sold in 2020. Then he found Thesis, a performance marketing agency, and grew it to 100 people with $3 million in revenue and sold it in 2021. Then he founded Course Report, an SEO-driven ratings and review site, which he then sold in 2021. And now he's the VP at BMG 360 Creative, a results-driven performance marketing service company. Welcome to the show, Adam.
Thank you. Thank you. 3 million in revenue. Oh, terrible. 3 million in EBITDA, bro. Come on.
and for the live audience and everyone who's here, I saw
that matter.
Yeah.
And for everyone that's on the live stream right now, I see Patrick, fractional CMO and consultant for North Star Estate. Just want to say, jump in with questions. Toby will be feeding these questions. If we can work them live into the conversations, you guys are here, you're live, so we want to make sure that we're taking advantage of having Adam here today as well as John. So let's jump right in. In our pre-call, we bounced around several topics. I'd like to start the show with how you see the evolving landscape of executions for media and the movement towards measurement of media. So Adam, what do you think about that?
So in our agency, we're managing maybe like $500 million in digital spend, or what we would classify as digital spends, like Snap, TikTok, Google, Facebook, et cetera. And then $500 million in what we call traditional channels, which is really mostly linear TV and CTV, which we lump in, but also a lot of radio and podcasts and streaming audio. So we get a good sense. It's all performance stuff. We get a good sense of like all this different spend mix. And in general, I mean, we're seeing even in our day-to-day jobs, like the media buying is basically gone because it's so automated. Like, the majority of our Facebook spend is Advantage Shopping Plus campaigns. Mm-hmm. All of our app install spend is either Google UAC or app campaigns or Facebook automated app ads, Facebook AAA. So that's all totally automated. And even some of the like challenger platforms like a TikTok, for example, has built smart campaigns or essentially the equivalent of Advantage Shopping Plus. So like there's not a ton of value to add on media buying in digital channels. You can still find spots like Reddit, okay, like you can mess that up, or like Outbrain or whatever, like random things that Nextdoor that are like less, their automation tools just aren't as advanced. And so you have to maybe intervene more. But otherwise, the job is kind of going away, which sucks because like this is literally the job I've had my entire life. It's like all I know how to do is like, bid this for, certain clicks or whatever. That's gone. And so I think what I've seen is there are sort of two major areas of emphasis today that have always been around but weren't as emphasized historically. One is measurement. Like, people have been running incrementality tests and lift tests forever. But now there are great platforms like yours and others, and also native tools built by the ad networks themselves that allow you to run like relatively sophisticated experiments that you couldn't run easily years ago. I remember 10 years ago, I was a customer of Criteo, of their retargeting product. And I was like, hey, I want to run an incrementality test. And they were like, oh boy, like this fucking guy. Like they just didn't want to do it. Like it was really hard. They were trying to dissuade me. Now, I mean, there's a million ways you could run that sort of an experiment, even without telling them, if you really didn't want to. So that is a big change versus performance marketing, like 5 years ago, it's certainly 10. The other thing that's notable about that is my colleagues on the traditional side, like guys who've been doing linear TV and radio, when I tell them, oh, incrementality test, lift test, it's like this big thing. Like people are really excited about it in the digital space. They're just like confused. They're like, what? Like we've been running, like market studies, like holdout groups of markets where we do and do not buy media forever. Like, what do you mean it's like a trend? I'm like, yeah, no, it is. It's like it wasn't not feasible. Now it's so easy. All these guys have made it so easy. Like they just can't comprehend that it's not like just a given. Because essentially every one of their media buys, by definition, is a geolift study. If you think about it. So it's like there's so much automation, so you don't have to do the job of media buying. Maybe that affords you more time to be more thoughtful about measurement, and also you kind of need to be more thoughtful about measurement as the quote unquote deterministic measurement becomes like less and less feasible or even possible. And then the second big trend, and this has always been the case, but of course, creative is super important in all of these channels. It's always been super important in all of these channels. But if you have all the time in the world, because your media buying job is gone, then you essentially just become creative strategists. So lots of agencies like mine, they kind of stop talking about the media buying part, and they just are emphasizing creative strategy and creative execution. And here's how we get UGC assets and stuff. So like, when I think about people with like growth titles, 5 or 10 years ago, I think your probably primary skill set would have been, media buying, like sort of ad operations. Now, probably and going forward, you're really, to be most effective, like a growth creative person hybrid, like where that's where you can add the most value. So that I'm 35, like I've been around this since I was like 20 or so. So I haven't seen the whole digital ads ecosystem, but I've been around it for a while, and those two things have been big shifts in the last couple of years. And the other thing I would add is all of this like automation and importance creative, like that's been the case in the mobile app ecosystem for a while now, because the ad networks sort of automated that first, it seems like, and it's been catching up in the e-commerce world in the last year or two. So I think there's still like plenty of like new interesting advancements and stuff in those areas specifically for e-commerce use cases. To give you an example, there's this one company that's really cool that is really commonly used in gaming to do creative evaluation. It's called Replay. So it's like it does post facto identification of elements of creatives and then looks at correlations of those elements to creative performance to try to like kind of tell you like what the next thing should be. And in gaming, that's really powerful because you could have thousands of different characters and items and different, gameplay footage featured in a creative. And so it's kind of hard to tease out like what is and is not working.
Yep.
And so like
Adam,
I think is coming to e-com and more. Like I think there's lots of stuff that is like that it will arrive in kind of our space, more so the e-com ecosystem.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like there's a lot of solutions popping up every day, both on the measurement side and on the creative side. How do you make sense of all of the complexity now? Because like the execution complexity is going away, but now measurement complexity is going up. So, you mentioned a couple tools there. How do you evaluate and how do you decide on which tools and products you look at?
Honestly, the creative one is the hard. Like I had a dude text me who runs many of the people on this call would recognize this guy's agency. It's a creative agency. He was like, hey, I'm getting pitched like 1 million AI creative things. Like, which of these is real? And I'm like, dude, I have no clue. Like, I have no idea. So I don't know, honestly. Like, you still haven't seen much, just talking about that for a second. You still haven't seen that much around video. It's most of the guys out there talking about generative AI and stuff as it relates to performance creative are talking about images. And that's cool, but like, that's a tenth of our spend, right?
Yeah,
it's not really relevant. So that's been Adam, a challenge. You guys know the measurement side even better than I do. But yeah, it went from a handful of quote unquote multi-touch attribution companies, which kind of don't really exist anymore, to like now a whole kind of new ecosystem of incrementality and other MMM tools. Like I think it's very challenging to navigate and understand the differences between these things. And even as an agency, we have a constellation of solutions that our clients use, including you guys. But it's not, I don't think there's any like, one size fits all or universal solution that's gained share.
I'm going to summarize what you said for the industry, right? It's kind of like the creative is the what, the media buying was the how, and then the measurements, the how much.
That's
and
right.
it kind of feels like, well, if the how is going into algorithms and AI and black boxes and stuff like that, we focus more by just human nature, more on the what, the creative, and the how much. Like,
totally. Yeah, totally. I mean, I was even having a conversation with someone about measurement in mobile app context. And she said, well, the first thing any app needs to do is implement the ATT prompt. That's the prompt that says, do you allow this app to track? And she said, that's critical, because if a subset of users allow themselves to be tracked, now their IDs are available. So that's still like deterministic measurement. And you know what the ad platforms do? We estimate based on that sample what the rest of the population is doing. If you can track one, guys, let's go.
Yeah.
And like, I was like, dang, so that means you don't have any of those deterministic IDs. Like, this is one of the big ad networks telling me this is really important to our forecasting. Well, what kind of forecasting are they doing with it that's not, available when an app hasn't done that? Like, that's got to be like pretty gnarly. So the platform's measurement is kind of like moving away from being, I think, measurement being the appropriate word, and being like towards estimate. And so especially in that context, I think it's more important to keep them honest. Like when third-party cookies worked perfectly, maybe you could rely on the platform reporting, more or less, or to a greater extent. But now when they're just like guessing in a lot of instances, that's like pretty sketch to just be wholly reliant on, what the Facebook pixel says or whatever.
No, completely agree. And I do think it's becoming a more and more biased sample as well. Who is opting in? Otherwise, you get a whole bunch of Android users that you're basing your entire marketing on. And we all know, I'm sure you know better than anyone with mobile gaming, Android and Apple people are very different.
100%. Yeah. I mean, we would try to extrapolate like, okay, well, the iOS numbers are this, the Android numbers are this. Let's make assumptions. It's like, but you look at the historicals when all of the IDs were available and the funnels converted totally differently. So it's like, well, we can't extrapolate anything. It's completely meaningless. So yeah, I mean, I think the rise of all this stuff like your tools and others is awesome. Like it kind of, and it also levels the playing field for channels, like quote unquote traditional channels and digital channels, because you can kind of measure them more so on an apples to apples basis, which is cool. So I think it's a cool time to be in this field generally, but it's a bit of a drag to me that the knowing how to manipulate these systems to get good results, like the actual day-to-day media buying, like is gone. Like that's kind of sad. I enjoyed doing that. I think a lot of people did. But that's gone forever. Like that's not coming back, clearly.
I could tell you, I used to send insertion orders for print ads for Bristol Myers Squibb. It doesn't get much older cool than that. Time Magazine. So,
well, believe it or not, we still do that for radio. That's how we buy radio. Send emails. It's crazy. But I remember early in my career, I was buying the new Facebook homepage ads in their feed, their new news feed, and it was a fixed rate of $1 CPM. So it's like, oh yeah, I'll buy $1 million of $1 CPM newsfeed inventory. Just, now 20 times as expensive or whatever.
We do have a question for the audience for you. If the goal on this is from Aditya Bagari. Hopefully I didn't butcher your name too much. If the goal on the campaign ad set level is to move away from deterministic measurement to probabilistic measurement, how do we evaluate creative performance, i.e. at the ad level? How do we know what's performing well?
Yeah, I mean, it's a fair point. It's like, well, I mean, what we do practically is rely primarily on the observable upper funnel creative metrics to ascertain which creatives are good and bad, i.e. hook rate, click-through rate, hold rate, which is like percentage of people who watch a certain like duration of the video. But I'm guessing you're making a good point implicitly, which is like, well, yeah, but if those ads are driving lower quality users, then like it's somewhat at odds. Like if you just optimize for really high click-through rate, you might translate to lower quality purchasers and or traffic. But we just say, well, that's the best we can do. Like, guys, it sounds stupid, but that's what we actually do. It's what we actually do in practice. And especially in e-commerce, like there's less variance of like LTV variance is less dramatic than that of a mobile game, for example, where a single user could spend thousands of dollars and another user could never monetize at all. That's extreme. At least in e-com, you get pretty good signal. Like, okay, they clicked on this creative and they probably did buy this thing. And so, okay, well, that means that creative can't be all bad. It's not just flooding my system with really low quality. So I think this problem that you're speaking to is like an even bigger issue. And when monetization is not immediate, like in the case of free subscription e-com, then it's like, ooh, wait a minute. Like you could have a killer ad driving a ton of traffic that's yielding nothing and not even know it for like, 30 or 90 days or whatever, based on, say, some monthly or quarterly subscription. So that's like when you have to be really on your toes. But in general for e-com, we just kind of say, if it's got a really high click rate, if it's got a really high hook rate, if at least, probabilistically, to use your terminology, it's driving conversions according to the pixels or even according to a platform like LiftLab, that's probably good enough, So that's the practical approach we take, basically.
It kind of falls into the quote that all models are bad, but some models are useful. And to be able to evaluate the model, you have to understand its flaws and shortcomings. So it's definitely not like a one size fits all, as you mentioned earlier, but rather how can we leverage the existing information that we have to make more informed decisions?
Exactly. Better than nothing.
Yeah, and switching a little bit from the individual campaigns and ad groups, can we talk a little bit about the channel mix? And how the industry might not be changing that much around it, or kind of how is the order that you build your media plan, just to make sure we have a little practitioner in here.
Yeah. So good resources for this are Veros, first of all, which is like a benchmarking and comparison tool, and there are others. But basically, if you look at those systems, there's a handful of them that have been published, other benchmarks. You'll see like Google and Facebook still comprise like 80 to 90% share of wallet for digital channels, if not more so. So it's like, all right, like TikTok's awesome and Snapchat and Reddit, it's all cool. Like it's all great. And there's cool Digiday articles and ad exchanger things and whatever. But like Facebook and Google are like the entire ecosystem. And if you want to lump in Amazon too, for brands selling through Amazon, that okay, fine. Now there's 3 names, but then it's 95% share. So like, I think there's a lot of attention is paid to channel alternatives, which again, I think is cool. But the ecosystem is more concentrated than I think like maybe you would be led to believe if you just read all of the blog posts and things and go to conferences. Like nobody goes to the conference. I was like, oh, Google's 75% of my budget. Like that sucks. Like that's so lame. They go to the conference and say like, we ran this cool direct mail test, right? And then everyone's like, oh, I guarantee you weeks later, there'll be a Digiday article like direct mail is making a comeback. Like that's every 6 months somebody writes that. So my point is it is more concentrated, like, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. And our rule of thumb is we basically maximize non-brand search until we've gotten to like a marginal ROI that like is our limit, whatever that is. Knowing that we're not just evaluating the channel on an absolute basis, but like what's our incremental return from our incremental spend. And then usually our rule of thumb is if you're not doing $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 a month into Facebook, it probably makes sense to just focus all of your attention there. And only when you reach that sort of, let's say $500,000 a month level, does the incremental dollar going to like a TikTok or a Snapchat or a whatever maybe start to get competitive. And the Facebook number might even be more than $500,000. But that's kind of the assumption we make. And yeah, I mean, TikTok for us is the fastest growing channel. It maybe constitutes like 5 to 10% of spend for some of our clients, which is material. I mean, that's up from 0 2 or 3 years ago. So that's like a lot of growth, but it's still small on an absolute basis. And then if you start to consider the TVs and CTVs of the world, and to a lesser extent audio, like those are great channels too. But the Facebook number, the marginal Facebook number is probably even more. It's like, you probably should be doing 7 figures a month into paid social generally before TV and connected TV, like actually on a pound for pound basis, like are delivering similar results, in terms of ROI. That, obviously there are exceptions to every rule and stuff, but like that's a pretty reasonable, assumption. And then of course you have stuff like affiliate is like an always on thing that in my mind draws from a different budget. You're going to do as much of that as you can, that's usually constrained. Organic search, you do an infinite amount of organic free traffic if you could, but like probably there's only so much you could realistically capture and a realistic amount you could actually invest there. So that's the channel mix that I think that we actually see. It's not cool. Like it'd be so much cooler if I was like, oh yeah, Pinterest, 15% of my budget, direct mail, 18%. It's like this constellation of channels. Like that's just not how it really works in most cases. The big clients we have are basically slamming CTV, Facebook, and Google. I mean, that's just what it is.
What about something a little bit more lower funnel, such as Apple search ads?
Oh yeah. Well, Apple search ads is bullshit. So Apple search ads are basically just like brand search. I mean, they capture a huge. I mean, it's small as a portion of Apple's revenue, but for any other business on the planet, it's a big business. Apple's search ads. But like. It's basically just people defending their own branded terms at best from competition, which is actually like makes sense, defensible. But a lot of the spend is just people like kind of blindly, saying, "Oh yeah, Apple search ads, what a great ROI." Of course, people searching your own name is going to convert. And actually, just this week, there are like rumors, not an official announcement, that Apple is going to launch a like Performance Max-esque product for Apple inventory. Okay. So the whole industry, my Apple mobile app industry is like, oh my fucking God. So they're basically going to like blend branded search ad traffic on the App Store with like random ads on the Apple News app or whatever, and then call the combination good, which is, to be fair, like kind of what Google is doing with Performance Max. In fact, not kind of, it is what Google is doing with Performance Max. Let me be more clear. But yeah, Apple's is even more of a racket than Performance Max because so much of the volume is actual branded queries. Like that's the majority of the ecosystem. So yeah, that is there was all this talk like, oh, it's like anti-competitive, like Apple is just trying to like steal share from these other vendors, and it's like, well, they are doing that, and maybe it is anti-competitive, but like they have a unique asset, right? Like Facebook can't just slap ads next to people who are like searching for a particular product. They can. Right. Like it's not that they're like stealing dollars from Facebook. They're just like doing something that's so high quality from an ROI perspective that it like belongs in a different tier. It's like a whole different channel almost.
I mean, I've just settled that the name for branded search should really not be referred to as, it's almost not advertising, it's navigation, right? It's really,
exactly. And defensive branded search has a real value. It makes sense. Like if you're just
I'm not saying you spend zero, but it is racket, or it's kind of
totally, it's a protection racket for sure. I mean, I think it's ridiculous, and it's like, oh, what do you know? Our campaign automation tools make it easier to like overinvest in retargeting. Oh, they make it easier to overinvest in branded search. Like, no shit. Like that is totally by design, right? Like that's not a mistake.
Well, and then we can get in the conference room or the Zoom room and talk about our impression share branded or whatever.
Well, yeah, totally. I mean, I had a CFO of a publicly traded company tell me, well, Adam, we'll hire your agency, but you pretty much have to be able to guarantee that our digital spend will return at a 10x ROAS or better. And I was like, nice. What? And they're like, yeah. So right now we spend, $200,000 a month on retargeting and $500,000 a month on search. And then I looked at the search campaigns, and of course it was, all branded. Yeah. And I was like, all right, well, here's reality. You could turn off all of that shit and it won't make a fucking. And like, actually, you should be targeting for your upper funnel prospecting spend, maybe a sub 1x ROAS on the basis by which you're evaluating it. Right. And it actually have more of a business impact. And needless to say, he did not hire our agency.
Yeah, well, you probably dodged a bullet there, Adam. I mean,
I don't know. I mean, when you start out by saying, "Can I get a 10x ROI?" That is definitely an interesting. start.
Oh, we can all
totally.
do that we can do that for that CFO right now. We can just cut the spend by about 90% and have it
Yeah, there you
very
go.
efficient.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There you go. But yeah, you see lots of posts. I'm always sort of curious about them. They're like, even from some credible vendors being like, well, we won't invest in channel X unless our ROI is, 4X or better. And I'm like,
Right.
hold on, like, wait a minute. So you spend $1 and you get $4 back. That's like a broken ATM. Like that's just a money printing machine. Like if that actually existed, because you would do that infinitely in any business context. Spend $1 today to get $4 back today, immediately. So I'm always like very skeptical generally of like ROI and those numbers as they are reported. Because when I actually look at a lot of our clients, like in a tool like Veris, marketing as a percentage of revenue is often like 30% or something. So it's like
it can be teens, 20s. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So like the blend of the entire business is, sub 3 or 4X. And then somehow there's a channel, a random marketing channel that has a cost associated with it. It's like, it just doesn't make any, it's like, how is this possible? It doesn't mathematically impossible. Or
anyone running at 30% is probably running off of outside capital, right? You can't really run a profitable business.
I mean, I've run into some supplement brands or actually you guys will like these like custom printing is huge on Facebook. There are tens of custom printed wood panel, whatever, that spend 7 figures a month and their margins are nearly 100%. So they could, as long as blended MER or marketing as a percentage of sales is sub 60% or whatever, they're still break even, So like there's some
margins cure all, right?
Yeah, exactly. But you're right for a proper, like a conventional e-commerce business. Pushing it above that is probably you probably have debt or equity or something going on to rationalize it.
For sure, especially with the low interest rates. But we had a question from the audience with Paul Kowalski. It's, can you talk about how you think about optimizing spend between funnel stages? How do you decide when to move dollars from performance to brand and vice versa?
Well, I mean, fundamentally, like, it's sort of a stupid comment, but like, I just refuse to like distinguish between the two, because it's like, all right, well, generally speaking, when people say brand, they mean something that's like less tangible and less measurable, i.e., we're going to go sponsor 10 influencers or whatever. But like a lot of times those are still kind of observable if you use a long enough period of time. And especially if you have the ability to like only do them in certain geographies, like even in certain countries potentially, which is maybe easier in the mobile context than an e-commerce context. But yeah, like our rule of thumb is we just try to hold, I'll give you a real example, actually. Friends of mine are founders of one of the big telehealth companies, like massive, well-known. And they're like, well, yeah. So we started by advertising on TV. And then we noticed that certain types of programming worked well around sports. So then we were like, oh, let's buy more of that. And we did. And that worked pretty good. And then we were like, oh, okay, well, maybe we could get a direct deal with the sports teams or networks or however it works. And we did. And then that worked pretty good. And then we're like, well, what else can we get if we buy more? And then like suddenly we're a jersey sponsor. And I was like, wow, okay, that's pretty cool. Like that's a very hardcore performance marketing shop. That's a jersey sponsor of like a random sports, NBA team or whatever. And like, if you looked at it from the outside, you say, wow, they shifted dollars to brand marketing. Well, that's cool. But actually, like the jersey sponsorship was just a byproduct of the fact that they committed to spend a certain amount in these other forms of media. And then they said, here, do the jersey sponsor too. And, it's part of the deal. So like, I thought that was a really practical and cool way. And they've taken even beyond that, like even beyond just being a single team jersey sponsor to like the next level. Right. So like, I thought that was a really cool and real world. It took them years to kind of like learn into that or feel confident enough to take that leap. But if possible, that's how we tend to think about it. And some channels are just inherently less responsive. Linear TV, can't click on anything. Right. I appreciate that people put QR codes in their TV creatives. Obviously, nobody scans those. Like that's absurd. So like it's harder to measure. So I guess you could classify it as brand spend. But again, if you can run some geo test or do some pre-post analysis or whatever, like You could kind of think of it like any other investment. So that's what we have tried to do. It's not always practical, obviously, but and certain tactics don't really lend themselves to that, like influencer stuff. That's like harder. Like you can't do it geographically. You don't really have any control. The rates are the rate. It's like you do kind of have to just take a leap at some point. But
hey, John, I know we've run quite a bit of branding tests, performance tests, and I think you're right where it's a little mixture of both. I call it lean back media versus lean in media. So, John, what are your thoughts about this allocation? Because I think this is the number one question you deal with our clients here at LiftLab.
Yeah, my answer is that quite often the brands that are reaching out are so over dependent on looking at click-based kind of last click-based attribution that they know it in their hearts that they are probably overweighting that into the funnel, and so our let go of the drug kind of rip it out of their hands is to show them the performance-based, call it in the incrementality really of their middle and upper funnel media. And we'll kind of explain, like, look, it may be driving some other things that we're not capturing here. It may have some even longer term effects. You may want to supplement this with some survey-based data. Have at it. But at a minimum, if you cut this off, this is how much revenue you're going to see go poof. Right. And so, and then it gets back to what kind of Adam said, then you get to sit and look at it kind of objectively and say, now, are those extra dollars into top of funnel more effective than what I've already kind of done, or my target for what you kind of call it maxing out, say one of the social channels or search. So it really is, can we show you what is the performance? Can we measure upper funnel on a performance basis? Not to say that's all it delivered, but to say, look, you may be shooting yourself in the foot if you cut this off. Like if you just kind of walk in and say, cut spend, and people do it top of funnel, then they need to know what's going to be the kind of outcome of that, or
I want to add something to that, because one thing I've found is, like, often when I have this conversation, which I've had millions of times with CMOs, they're like, okay, we're going to invest more in top of funnel. I'm like, great. That's awesome. I think the bottom of funnel is the most bullshit. So I'm with you. We're going to do more brand. So some amount of the campaign is going to optimize for video views. Some amount of the budget is going to optimize for traffic. And then some of the amount of the budget is going to optimize for conversions. And I'm like, ooh, okay. Like, we could do that for sure. Then we can measure it in the way you just described, John, and that's cool. And it could work out great. But like, isn't it notable that when we optimize for video views, for example, the CPMs of that media are a tenth of the media that we're optimizing for conversions? Sure. And also, isn't it remarkable that the video view completion rate for those campaigns is sky high relative to our normal campaigns, and the click-through rate is almost zero? It's almost like the algorithms are so fucking good at showing ads to people who just watch stuff but never click, when advertisers ask for people who just watch stuff and never fucking click. And it's like, okay, let's move up the chain. You want to optimize for just impressions? Great. Wow. Now the video view rate is almost 0% on the exact same creative. Click-through rate 0, and the CPMs are even lower. Like, so that's where I tend to be like, okay, you want to put more into the top of funnel? Spectacular. Let's lower our ROAS targets for our actual campaigns that drive results. And instead of targeting a 1.2x one day click, whatever, we target a 0.5x. Because like, if you give some of these platforms the opportunity to take your money and show it to their shittiest audience, they will jump at the opportunity.
They will oblige. We would want to just know the incremental. Let's know the incremental revenue for those. I mean, I love that you're bringing up the optimization. Like when we say something like top of funnel, there are still media buying choices there. They're not as many, but right, your examples are great. For sure. I would just say, I want to know the incremental of each of those, right? I mean, absolutely. And it could be fine with me that you got 0 people clicking, but you've got a healthy chunk.
If you can show that a video view campaign on Facebook is actually driving ROAS, first of all, the client will be stoked. You guys look like geniuses. And you know what will be the most stoked? The people at Facebook. They'll be like, whoa, this is amazing. Like, we should get everybody to do this shit. Yeah. But that's hard. Like,
I can tell you, I can tell you when I was at Facebook, they were talking about clicky people and viewy people versus buyy people. And the ones that have larger amounts of data and signal are the ones that are more expensive in the auction. The one counterpoint, though, that I would make is if there are platform signals that are unique to that platform. So if you're dealing with big budget advertisers and they show up on the website and the pixel fires across all publishers, those people will be pillaged with ads like 15, 20 frequency.
Swipe ups on Snap or whatever that's unique to the Snap UI. Yeah.
So there are some things that I think allow you to diversify when people are showing interest. But I think that you're right, like impression-based, reach-based stuff needs to be carefully filtered before the algorithms kick in and then have propensity scores. You got to like limit
100%.
Yeah, no, completely.
That's my biggest problem with the whole performance versus brand thing, because it often becomes just now the whole buying strategy has changed, and now we're just giving the platforms the opportunity to just destroy us. And by the way, suddenly they're like, oh yeah, let's run a brand lift survey. Brand lift survey? What the fuck? You never mentioned that when I was spending millions of dollars a month on performance campaigns, but suddenly I want to run a video view campaign. You're all, we got to run a brand lift survey. It's like, isn't that notable? Like, you want to come up with some way to show me that this is worth something. On the other hand, there's channels, linear TV, where impression is an impression. I mean, there's different ways you could buy, remnant and stuff, but like basically you're buying more or less of the same. Radio is actually even a better example. There's an infinite amount of radio ad inventory available if you want to buy it. So those campaigns actually scale. If they're working at a low scale, they scale in a very linear way, because it's like, well, I spent $50,000 this week. I probably could spend $100,000 next week. I get the same shit. Like I'll get, it's not like suddenly I'm optimizing for 30-second listens versus 10-second listens or whatever. They don't have the ability to do it. So it doesn't apply. Obviously, it doesn't apply to all channels. I think, digital channels are like unique and they're able to exploit you as a media buyer. But I hope, our dream as an agency is to be able to rock up and like run a traffic campaign. That'd be amazing. And then show that it has incremental lift and everybody's happy. Incredible. It'd be so easy. I do it all day, but I've very rarely actually found that works. It's,
we have a question.
One more. Oh yeah, go for it.
We got a question from Dustin Stolberg. He wants to know, so never do a non-conversion objective campaign in Meta. Every rep I've ever had has told me to spend 10% more and presumably waste 10% of my budget.
Okay, I'll give you a real world example of this. I won't name the company, but there's this one company, a very big gaming company, super well known. They make super high quality games, super high quality creative. You can probably discern who I'm talking about based on that, but whatever. They were spending so much through Facebook that like so much that they really were maxing out. Like they were driving so much auction pressure against the audience they wanted to hit on the like conversion campaign side, that shifting dollars to these other, I would argue, shittier conversion or these other objectives like traffic and video views actually performed well, because like they just were doing so much. They capped out. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so like I have seen a few instances of that, but maybe you're probably more optimistic about this. Like I can say in my career, 15 years, I can think of 0 instances where, because I always, whenever a CMO is like, yeah, we're going to do some video view, whatever. I'm like, great, love it. We're going to run a multi-cell test. We're going to run a lift test against it. And yeah, who knows what the results will be. Maybe you're right. Like, yeah, maybe you're right. And they get massacred every single time. Like, obviously they get killed for all the reasons we're talking about. So I've never seen it, but I'm sure there are instances where it's true. I mean, you guys probably see more of it than I do.
From the publisher side, I could tell you there were some successes, but to your point, very few and far between. And what they had is very narrowing filtering. So before they're even qualified, they're choosing the audience through a bunch of other filters. Then they're opening it up to say, yeah, go for views, go for impressions, go for clicks against a
you have to be a woman, this age range. Yeah, that makes sense.
Exactly. So those are typically the ones that perform better. So I would say the broader you're targeting based off of your goal-based bid, the narrower your audience should be to balance that out. Otherwise, you're just going to get the remnant in inventory that people don't want that you can't track. So completely.
Yeah, that totally makes sense.
So I guess if we want to shift into the last topic here, I think this is a really fascinating one because you have a pretty deep knowledge on. And I think that based off of what you said, mobile gaming as marketers is really next level, right? It doesn't end with the app download. It doesn't end with level complete. It ends when it doesn't end. It's like an ongoing CRM. So could you tell me a little bit about what marketers could learn from all your experience with mobile gaming and how they run their marketing campaigns?
Yeah, I mean, they're the most sophisticated. Gaming, generally speaking, is like the most sophisticated direct response advertising on the internet for like a very long time. It's like not a new dynamic, and so you do see a lot of like trends. Like for example, app campaigns, or what they're called at the time, universal app campaigns, rolled out in Google like, I don't know, 5 years ago or something, 6 years ago. And it was a big deal. Performance Max then followed like maybe 2 years ago, something like that. Mm-hmm. So this ecosystem has been accustomed to like kind of the media buying edge, like largely dissipating and going away. So to adapt to that as an ecosystem, they are the most sophisticated with respect to creative production, processes for creative production, and now leveraging like AI and other tools in support of creative production. Because you hear a lot of e-commerce people be like, oh, we test thousands of ads a month. And 99% of the time, that's bullshit. Like they don't actually, like they're just lying in my experience. But occasionally they do. These guys in gaming, when they're like, yeah, we test like 10,000 creatives a month, they're dead serious. Like they're not messing around. They're not posturing at a conference. Like they actually do. But those creatives are generated programmatically. So that's like how they're physically able to do it. So that is the area where I think one area where they're like really far ahead. Another area, which is like very gaming focused, but I think is interesting. We had talked about this in our little pre-call session, is there's this whole discipline in the gaming industry of live operations. So there's teams. I'm the director of live ops. What does that mean? I have no idea. Like I literally had to ask, what do you do? They basically run special events. That's what live operations is in the gaming context. So it's like the most extreme examples are Fortnite, essentially the biggest game in the world, doing these integrations with Star Wars or Shakira or whatever, and having actual concerts and things in game. That's pretty extreme. The more micro examples are some random game has a special in-game 3-day period with special creative and special messaging and special offers, special like leaderboards and stuff. It's just a special event, and it's used to reactivate the existing base. And also it's not strictly speaking a way to just do discounting, but that's usually part of it. It's like, well, during this spring special gaming season in Game X, certain skills or power-ups or swords or whatever are available at a discount. And so when I think about it, I'm like, yeah, okay, that's kind of, it's like a more engaging and fun way to merchandise shit that's otherwise always available. You can always buy the like sword of whatever. It's just like they wrapped it in this fun thing that like makes it a little bit like special and more unique. And I contrast that with give me your email address to get 10% off your first purchase pop-ups that are like ubiquitous in e-commerce. And I'm like, well, that could probably be more fun. Like, maybe there's special discounts that are tied to certain content that you created that highlight a certain product that's like seasonally relevant or something. Like it's like sort of an evolution of just some blanket discount. So that's another area that I think is maybe there are some unique aspects of gaming where, that only makes sense in certain contexts. But like live operations broadly, I think has application like beyond strictly gaming, because they're kind of spending more time actually engaging with their existing customers than I think a lot of us in e-commerce bother to do. For example, I'm a customer of Reef. I just bought new sandals. So surely I'm going to get an email maybe every 2 days or something with like random sandals until I unsubscribe. And that's fine. That's cool. But like at no point am I likely going to get any actually interesting content or like an interview of the designer of the sandal or like where they're made or the founder talking about whatever. I might find it interesting. I don't know. Maybe not, but like probably worth it, to produce that kind of content. And I think the gaming guys think of it in a similar way. They're like, well, we spent $1 gajillion driving these people in the game. Why not do a special event to re-engage some subset? And yeah, not everybody is going to do it. and not everybody's going to read the interview of the guy who designed the sandal, but like a subset of people will, and they're existing customers. So like, why not, like cater to them and make their experience better? So that's another area. Maybe it doesn't apply, but I think it could, because in ecom, we take, I think, a kind of monolithic approach to like CRM to existing customers, where we just spam them with email periodically. That's literally it. Like, that's the approach. It's like,
I do think
do more. I think maybe.
And I do think, with CRM and utilization, kicking it really old school, I refer to John's group as the Williams-Sonoma Mafia, because they were doing direct mail early. They were fostering those relationships. And I think that was before it became ubiquitous. So I guess this question is for John, with CRMs, and fostering client relationships. What have you seen interesting in your career where they're not just spamming those ads? Have you seen anything particularly unique?
Well, I mean, if I was actually thinking about the comment from Adam, what's unique about gaming is that there's people logging in every day and they're interacting with the brand, because there's a sense of satisfaction and a sense of competition, and there's a reason to. Yeah, there's a different psychology than 4 days post Reef purchase. You may not really be too excited to dedicate time to Reef, right? So I think what behooves the e-commerce folks is to say, what from live ops could I learn from? How do I adapt that kind of thinking? Because it's not a one-to-one. You can't just go to a live ops conference and then like get back to the Reef headquarters so you got to figure out how to adapt that to a totally different psychology, a different buying cycle, and stuff like that. That's why it's I think you're onto something, and it's the clever, operators and brands that figure out, what is there to harvest from this? Like, how do I challenge my kind of current thinking?
It's also just like, the way I think about it is like, if everyone is a publisher, essentially, whether in e-commerce business or not, through social channels and through email, why not create content for those channels that is appropriate? I'm not saying go crazy, but like, would a once a month email from the CEO describing their new product launches and what they're doing, whatever, be interesting to a subset of subscribers? I think so. I mean, probably be better than just like, here's our best deals of the week, which is all the bullshit that I get from all these sites. So like, and that's a $500 investment of time, to like make a blog post, basically. So I just think there are maybe opportunities in our world to like, for both email and I guess to a lesser extent SMS, now that's kind of in vogue, like not just have it be, hey, get it, this is 10%, here's the best selling products of the month, and just blast the shit out. And you're totally right, John, like the cadence is different. Maybe you only send an interesting thing once a month or once a year, I don't know, but like something. And by the way, that content could be used in social, like it could be used all sorts of places.
I do like the frequency piece. What I saw from restaurants is coffee has really good CRM. Like there's more Tim Horton members than there are houses in Canada. And, if you have a high frequency purchase like that, the Starbucks rewards, all those did really well because you can engage on a multiple frequency. You're always in market. You're constantly purchasing. You can foster that the same way gaming, right? If you're, Olive Garden or one of those other brands, you got to provide a lot of value because it's a very infrequent purchase and it's something that is a little bit higher value. We do have another question from Irene Zhang. Can you share your POV on the different metrics measured success for B2C versus B2B companies? And are there any additional challenges on measuring B2B success in particular?
No, I mean, the B2B stuff is like impossible. We do have B2B clients, and obviously it opens up different channels like LinkedIn is suddenly a channel that's relevant and stuff. But man, it's so hard. It's like, it's particularly the further up you go on the enterprise sales sort of ladder, price point and stuff, like all of this stuff basically goes entirely out the window. So yeah, I mean, I think it's funny that B2C people are like kind of crying about how, ATT and then I can't measure anything or whatever. It's like, dude, try to sell a $500,000 software license. I dare you to figure out where those leads come from. So honestly, that is largely over my pay grade. We have a handful of clients and, we do the best that we can. But I think it's an infinitely harder problem to solve, and it's requires so much more just like intuition than the consumer stuff does. Even a lot of tactics like geolift testing are out the window because you can't even, there's not enough data to even observe it. Yeah, exactly. So like that's tough. That's really what it boils down to. I wish I had a better answer.
I'll just say for the B2B side, there's a big step function between are they selling to a lot of small businesses, or is it
SMB is like essentially consumer.
Closer.
Yeah, I mean,
right. Yeah, it's closer to consumer. Once you get into the account-based marketing, and they've got 4 people working one, opportunity. Yeah, that's a whole different beast at that point. Yeah, and is your Facebook paid ad, right, or your Google click, really that big of a sway in things when it's taking 4 people to close a deal?
Yeah, totally. And I think it's like one of those things that human beings are underestimated, or in my experience, often underestimated. It's like, hey, well, you could spend $50,000 on random Google search ads for sure in this B2B context, or have a human being like go call every single blah person in America. Like, that guy making those phone calls might be worth it. Like that's it's more likely to be competitive, even though it's the old school.
I did see one really interesting B2B at eTail West. There was a brand that targeted the geography of eTail West and said, come by our booth. So I thought that was something where if you're targeting businesses using those geo-targeting, but I think to your point, being able to measure the results of it and measure the outcomes is a big challenge. John, we do have a couple of clients that do have some B2B measurements, a little bit more on the SMB side of things. Is there any sort of recommendations you have in terms of outcomes that might be a little bit more, a little different than the outcomes that you would be looking on?
What comes to mind for the B2B customers is that it puts them in their own unique spot, just like the live ops makes, kind of gaming in their own unique spot, is the call it the contract value or their average order value. Once you're pushing products that are thousands of dollars, you can basically afford to buy all the affiliate clicks, right? Like if you get one more transaction, you kind of funded the whole program for the day. So, they end up with their own unique challenges. And for me, it really does not change the playbook. It's if you're working, if you're not doing account-based marketing, and if you're doing really performance marketing, you just need to know those economics. Like, okay, I just have established that I can just saturate the affiliate channel because it might not be great, and it might not be that all of them are incremental, but one, changes the game for us. Yeah, knowing that, and then buying that with confidence, and then finding ways, even maybe to go negotiate and expanding inventory for that. You don't want to go make those marketing plays if you don't have the fundamentals and the economics to go decide.
Just as another thought, one of my favorite marketing campaigns, we were on Dell doing public and large enterprise, and Katie Janko, one of my coworkers, uploaded all the codes for the scanner, the barcode scanners for all the different pieces, and it was a single click on a mouse UPC code, and then they went and bought a $100,000, like $100,000 solution. So it was like one click, couple cents resulted in like an $800,000 purchase on a server solutions. That's why last click is still garbage, everyone, if you've been listening to the last episodes. And also B2B is very difficult with that path because that would attribute that click to that UPC code, which is silly.
Right.
Cool. So I think if we don't have any more questions from the audience, is there anything parting notes, words of wisdom for the group, Adam, or maybe a quick soapbox that you might want to end on?
Oh man, wow, that's a good question. Not really. I mean, I would say if anybody out there ever wants to hit me up, I'm down. So I kind of am chilling, honestly, most of the time. I sold the various businesses over the last couple of years, trying to figure out what's next. So I like talking about this stuff, and I still send a weekly newsletter. I've done it for like 10 years. The domain is grow.co. Just articles that I find interesting about customer acquisition stuff. But yeah, no, yeah. I think what you guys are doing is cool. I think like the growth of all of like the fact that everybody says the word incrementality and this ecosystem like regularly is awesome. Like, because oh, yeah, like I said, that Criteo example, it was like I was a pariah to be like, is this incremental? They're like, oh, who the fuck is this guy? Like they hated me. So now it's like even the platforms are like, I think, embracing solutions that they've built or solution providers like you guys. I think it's awesome. And is like is a significant advancement. So
We just got to get them on marginal, Adam. We got to get the.
That's the next channel. Yeah, I mean, you're right though. You still, it's like, oh, we did this analysis of Snapchat, and it's like blah blah blah. X ROAS. It's like, well, that's an absolute. Like that's not we're not even thinking about. So yeah, maybe that's the next. You're right. That's the next progression. But I think it's awesome. The number of different people building in this space, maybe I imagine will consolidate over time, but is just really encouraging to me. And I think there are a lot of good solutions out there that fit, different types of businesses and stuff, you guys included. So yeah, I do miss the days of like buying certain keywords and not others, and this ad and doing this targeting and whatever. That was fun.
It was a video game.
Yeah, it was like uploading. I had spreadsheets with hundreds of thousands of rows and all this shit. That's gone. I miss it. But yeah.
I definitely don't, because my Thanksgivings on Black Friday were uploading the sheets to Microsoft Ad Center, and back then Ad Center was not what it is today. So you don't know if those things uploaded. So then you're Googling your keywords, Dell computer deal, all through Thanksgiving to make sure your stuff is live. But I digress.
That's right. That's right.
Anything else, John, or should we call it a show?
No, I enjoyed chatting with Adam. Thanks for coming on. Thanks for the insights as always. And good luck out there with all the brainstorming you were talking about.
Cool. Thank you. Appreciate it.
And thank you to the audience and the questions that we had during it. We really appreciate live interactions. The next Curve Your Enthusiasm is 4/23. That's April 23rd at 11 a.m. with EST with Dirk Beyer. So see you guys then, and thank you for showing up.
All right.
All right, guys. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye.